Good morning, good morning. Is that a soothing way to start your morning? Hopefully it is. Guys, welcome back into Morning Glory. Thanks for being here for another week. Okay, I have got so much to fill you guys in on. It's actually kind of fucking wild, okay? Because the last time I filmed like a normal episode where we're not actually doing a specific task or I'm not talking about, say, an album was many weeks ago, okay? And guys, I have been through the ringer and back, because I would just like to preface this all by saying we might get into some deep topics, but all in all, I'm on the up. I'm back around. I was going to say on the up again. Yeah, you get the gist. We're doing well again. So as much as we might hit on some negatives, just remember, all in all, it comes full circle and nothing ever lasts forever. Okay? Now that is inspirational. I think you're wonky. Let me just change that. Okay, I've just fixed that, and I don't think that actually made any difference. So I apologise if you're wonky, if you're watching visually, but hopefully I've sorted it out in post-production. Guys, like I said, yeah, there's maybe a few deeper topics today. I'm unsure, to be honest, because I've got so much written down in my notes, like from very random things to like extreme deep topics that I kind of want to talk at length about. So I guess we'll just see what comes out, and who knows, this might have to be like the first of maybe 2 parts of a deep chat, depending on how long it takes me to get through all of this. But let's not start with deep, okay? Let's not start with deep. We'll get there. We will. Trust me, there's many things that we'll get to. Let's start with some more light-hearted things. Last night, I did, in fact, watch Aquaman 2. Now, the night before, I did watch Aquaman 1 because I had heard that Aquaman 1 was really good. So I was like, oh, it was like, guys, it was like £3 to like rent it on fucking Amazon Prime or something. So I was like, you know what? I'll watch it because I love the sea and I love sexy men. Okay? So I was like, you know what? Sounds good to me. Let's watch it. Watched the first one. Actually really enjoyed the first one. Don't get me wrong, there was cringy elements. I'm not gonna take away from that. There is some cringy elements. And I will say some of the CGI with the sea and whatnot, they could have done better, I feel. Because at this point, when I think of like underwater things, the top of the top for me is how they made The Little Mermaid. I think like that was a masterful piece of media in terms of like underwater movies. You know, I think they did a really incredible job of shooting that and making it look the most realistic I think we've seen to date. Aquaman, it fell flat in terms of that, but it wasn't too bad in the first one. However, the second one, what the fuck was that movie? I'm so sorry. Sorry to the creators. I'm sure you worked really hard on it. But I mean, realistically, there was a bunch of obviously reasons why it was probably doomed to flop, given the whole Amber Heard thing. I'm not going to get into it, but I know you guys know what I'm talking about. I imagine she probably had a bigger role to play, but because of obviously everything that happened between the first and the second movie, that wasn't the case in the end. So it was like she barely had any dialogue. They had a fucking kid. They popped out a kid. Guys, why is it with every superhero movie, obviously the ones that I've seen, I've not seen them all, but like, if you watch my main channel stuff, then obviously I mentioned it in the Thor one, and it's just always the case. Like, superheroes always have to have a love interest, right? Which is fair enough. I understand it. Okay, it makes sense. You've got a strong, powerful female. It only makes sense to, you know, make sure that she needs a man to be there, you know? Fucking stupid. But anyway, so I get it. I imagine it just makes it a bit more interesting, and it like thickens the plot very easily. Like, they haven't really got to do much. You know, you bring in a love interest, people are instantly more invested, right? So that was fine. I understood that in the first one, even though they didn't really have any chemistry. I'll just say that. Or like they didn't really have that many moments where it was like, oh yeah, I can see them really getting along here, whatever. But in the second one, why is it always A sequel, they have to pop out a baby. What are we doing? Like in the second one, guys, they pop out a baby. But bear in mind, the girlie rarely lives on land, right? Obviously, I'm assuming they do come back to the house, but like they rule the water, the sea. So like to go to work and whatnot, they're away from the child in the sea for most of it. Okay, then they come back late at night sometimes. Both of them. And then they leave it to the dad to fucking look after the child, which is, I guess, fair enough. But I'm sure the dad's got some shit to do, He's a single guy living in he runs the lighthouse, I think. So I guess that's one of those things that you can just do by just looking, I suppose. But yeah, so they pop out a fucking kid, and then there's just so many, like, I don't even know if it's plot holes or just bad writing in the second one. Like, they've turned everything very techie, which what I liked about the first one was that, like, we were riding, like, real sharks and stuff. Like, it was real sea creatures and sea animals, and it's like every sea creature that you kind of see in the second one is either fucking bioluminescent, so it looks fake as fuck, or it's like a half robot, half shark, and it just takes away from like the sea elements of it, like the all natural sea elements and how powerful the sea and its creatures can be. The whole plot of the movie is how Atlantis don't want to reveal themselves to the real world because they hate the real world, the on-land world even. They hate the on-land world. But yet, you're using technology underwater. It just seemed a bit fucking stupid to me. And then there's like bits like at the very end, we're all in the Arctic, and the child's there in just a blanket, and it's totally fine. It's just stuff like that. It's just like, it just doesn't make sense. A lot of this doesn't make sense. And like the villain, the outfit on the villain is so ugly. I think all in all, because I also watched Blue Beetle, and I think I might have talked about that in a podcast episode. All in all, I think we need to give it up when it comes to bugs, right? I think we need to give it up with bug things and trying to make bugs happen, right? I know there's Ant-Man, and I think I've seen it. Have I seen Ant-Man? I struggle with Marvel, knowing what I've seen and what I haven't, so it'll be intriguing when we get further along, but I can't remember if I've seen Ant-Man. But I know he doesn't look slay. So like the villain in the first and the second one, it's the same guy. Bloody fabulous. But what was good about the first one was kind of like we had the family conflict, of his like kind of psychotic brother. But then in the second one, the brother helps us now, apparently. But then the other villain is the exact same, and the outfit is god awful. He has hip pads, and I understand it's probably based off the comics, but there's some things that don't need to be so exact, Like we can make a few minor changes. Like I'm not sure this man needed hip pads. I'm not. And like the helmet looked so fucking cringy, not scary whatsoever. Like I wasn't ever worried about it, But yeah, all in all, not to dwell on Aquaman, but I watched it last night, and I finished it, and I was just like, you know what? I know it was maybe only, £3, I think I said, to rent it. £3 not well spent. Right, I'm sorry. £3 I'd prefer to have in my pocket, because that could pay for me a meal deal at Tesco, which would have brought me much more joy. I can guarantee you that. But yeah, it was really bad. And like, once again, the sea thing, I mentioned in the first one how it was like a little bit questionable. The underseaness of it all looked even worse in the second one. Like weird lighting on the characters, like almost too much contrast. I didn't believe they were under the water whatsoever. Like it looked really bad CGI. Not to keep hammering on, I'm going to stop now because I do apologize if you really liked the movie, but I do question if you did like the movie, why? Maybe it's just for, Jason Momoa and that sexy goddamn outfit. Well, somewhat sexy. Well, it is what it is. But guys, speaking of movies that I hate, I actually watched a movie that I loved. So let's do the opposite here. Let's do both. I'm nothing if not, equal here. Okay, we'll hit on bad things, but we'll also hit on good movies. I watched Priscilla recently. Obviously the Elvis story that's obviously told from Priscilla's perspective and like how she lived her life and whatever. And it was obviously made by A24, so it had a vastly different vibe to the Elvis movie. And I have thoughts. I do have thoughts because I loved the Priscilla movie, but I think the Priscilla movie, the way it was made and directed and like the whole vibe of it, it was made more towards the things that I generally enjoy. Like I don't really care for biopics all that often. Is it biopic or biopic? I'm not sure. I don't necessarily care for biopics. It feels weird to say now. I've fucked it. I don't care for those kind of movies all that often. I don't tend to watch them, or if I do, it'll be like a one-off watch. I probably won't watch it again. They just don't float my boat. And I'm always a bit funny with telling the story of a celebrity that's passed. I'm not sure if it sits well with me. Like I know there's an Amy Winehouse one coming out or has come out. I can't remember. I don't know if I like that because given the fact that I feel Amy wasn't the kind of celebrity that loved the fame, if anything, that was the worst part of it for her. And obviously, like, she was in it for the music, I feel. Now, I don't know too much about Amy Winehouse, so I could be speaking out of my arse. But from things I've seen of her, I think she struggled with a lot of the fame aspects of things. So I don't like that we're telling her story. I don't know. It just feels a bit icky. I don't know how to, like, kind of portray what I'm thinking, but it just feels a bit icky that we're still... Oh, that's what it is, I think. We're still profiting off of her name and her career, even though she passed, and so young too. It's just a funny one. And it's kind of the same with Elvis. Like, he was definitely a troubled guy and, like, struggled with managing the fame and whatnot. So, all in all, I'm just a bit funny about biopics, whatever. That being said, I loved Priscilla. I think it was very well made. I feel like it was very carefully taken care of. I think what made the difference for me was that Priscilla, like real life Priscilla, actually had a hand in the movie and made sure things were portrayed correctly and whatnot and like true to how it was. Like I didn't feel like it was what's the word? Like I didn't feel like anything was like dramatized or just like over exaggerated for entertainment purposes. But what was interesting after I finished watching it, because I was really affected by the movie, I thought it was really incredible. If you haven't seen it yet, it is on Amazon Prime. Not to plug Amazon Prime, but there you go. It is on Amazon Prime to, I think, buy or rent. But what was interesting to me, I was intrigued as to how Priscilla performed in comparison to the Elvis movie. And to no surprise, Priscilla did fractionally well in comparison. Like, it was not to the same level as Elvis's. And it made me... I want to tread carefully here because I don't want to offend anyone, because I do think the Elvis movie was really good, and I think Austin Butler did a great job. But I think it's very interesting how that movie was very glamorized and like shiny in like the way it was all portrayed, which obviously is just a different style. But how interesting that that's the version that people cared about more. And like, I don't know, like in my opinion, I thought Priscilla was almost more interesting because we're actually seeing almost a peek behind a curtain to like someone's life who people obviously admired and loved. Like, I'm not a very big Elvis fan. I apologize. It was kind of past my time. But it was almost more interesting to hear the story from Priscilla's perspective and how he would just leave her for like weeks on end or like months on end, and she's just meant to be there when he comes back and she's not allowed to have a life and all this kind of thing. Like, I thought the story was so much more interesting from that kind of perspective, because of course we all see and we all know of or have seen clips of what Elvis was like when he performed and like in his heyday and stuff, and we know more about his story from the perspective of Elvis. I feel like that's more documented, so it just made me a bit disappointed that more people didn't care to hear Priscilla's side. I don't know. I was just left a little bit disappointed because I feel like it was such a good movie. And it was definitely handled with care, and it just made me a bit disappointed because I feel like if more people gave it a chance, I think people would actually enjoy the take. And I understand it; it wasn't necessarily created to be this like big blockbuster movie, you know. Like I feel like the Elvis biopic was definitely geared towards being that. Like it was flashy, it was expensive, it was glamorized, it was I don't know, it was just all the things that I feel like everyone kind of expects from Elvis. And obviously, yes, it obviously told his actual story and whatnot, which was also very interesting. But I think even in that movie, I preferred seeing the more toned down parts and like him in his downtime and like his life rather than the glitz and the glam and whatnot. Just in general, I think in that movie, some of the meaning maybe got lost with it being so, woo, Elvis, you know? I don't know. I haven't watched the Elvis one since it first came out. Like I've only watched it once. So it would be interesting to watch it again now and see what I think. But I really support the Priscilla movie. So if you haven't seen it, go watch it. It's really good. Crazy. What everything that happened is fucking crazy. And how toxic and on and off this relationship was is wild. But it's such an interesting perspective of it coming from someone who was so young when they first met Elvis. Like, she was 15 when he first met her. Fucked. Okay? And it's so interesting how you kind of see it from her lens and you can almost see how he got her on side and, like, made her feel so special, but then ultimately also treated her like shit at some parts of their life, you know? Overall, very, very good movie. And if you haven't seen it, go watch it. Okay, and then you can let me know your thoughts. But yeah, in terms of movies, that's kind of what I've been enjoying. Now, I think we've had a good amount of time there talking about some not so deep things. So I feel like I may as well just get into some of the shit that I wanted to speak about because I have been putting off filming and recording this episode for several weeks at this point. So I guess the first thing that I feel like I probably should talk about is my dog. What happened to my dog? So most of you won't know because I didn't post about it much. I literally posted about it in the Discord and that's it. So only people that are in the Discord will probably know about it. And the reason being is because obviously like it was a big change for me and it was definitely an adjustment. Basically, let's just start from the beginning. For months and months now, I feel like I've been getting more and more lonely, which is not something new for me. I think I've talked about being lonely in the past. I think actually in the first episode of this current podcast, I spoke about the fact that I'm lonely, but I like it. Now, I will say over the past few weeks, I've become not so much unsettled with the idea of being lonely or like feeling negatively lonely, but I think there's been certain things happen in my life or like certain things people have said to me that we'll go into obviously that's kind of made me feel differently about spending so much time in my own company because I think you guys will know by now, and I think this is what I said in the first episode. Generally, I love my own time. I love living alone. I love spending time with myself. I like focusing on my work and my career. I like just doing things for myself. Like I love going to the gym. You know, like I don't need to be around people to have fun. But I think innately with that, whilst also being young, comes a big pressure to have friends. I think generally in this day and age, especially with social media and like seeing people on social media be out and about with their friendship groups, like it can get a bit sad sometimes when you're not someone who generally has a big friendship group or has many friends in the area, so you don't go out as often as many people do. And then it's like, along with that, I've been obviously trying to speak to people on like a romantic level, and obviously having to say to people that you're obviously wanting to impress, I guess, and like get to know and stuff, that obviously like you don't really have that many plans week to week, and like you don't see that many people because like your friends live fucking all over the country, so it's not easy just to pop over to their house. Because I think the thing that I struggle with, obviously I went to uni in London, whereas a lot of people that just like work more normal jobs and stuff, they went to uni around their hometown and like met a bunch of people at uni that all kind of live around the same area, and no one really moves away. So that's like the easiest way of obviously keeping in contact, because none of you go anywhere after uni. You're kind of just getting jobs in the same area, so it's very easy to keep the friendship group alive. Whereas obviously the nature of where I went for uni and the nature of like the dance industry in general is you kind of go wherever the work is. You know, like you don't plant yourself in one place. Like one year you can be God knows where, the other year you'll be in the UK. You know, like my sister's in fucking Australia currently working. Like you've not got ground legs. I feel like you kind of flying by the seat of your pants essentially. So it's very normal for dancers to kind of like make friends as they go, and also just like see your friends from uni and stuff whenever you can, or whenever you're in the same place, whatever. So like friends and whatnot, that's going to be something we can always talk about more in maybe a lengthier episode. But obviously I need to get back to the point at hand, which is obviously I felt lonely. I don't have many friends. That was partially the reason. I don't have a boyfriend. That's partially the reason. And then on top of that, social media and friends and whatever in my life have made me feel like not that I should be ashamed to have less friends, but they've made it seem like it's a problem. So overall, I became very lonely, and I was kind of confronted with a lot of the negative feelings towards loneliness that I don't always feel all that often, because like I said, I do enjoy my own company. So for months and months, I was like, what can I do? Like, obviously I can try and make friends, but I've tried that in the past, and that's really gone belly up and tits up often. So I'm kind of scorned when it comes to trying to make friends. And I was like, you know what? I've really wanted a pet for a really fucking long time. Like, I've wanted a dog for so long. Like, this was not a hasty decision by any means. Like, I have been wanting one for so long. But obviously living in a flat, not driving, obviously it's something that I've had to like figure out the logistics of, which I had done and I did do. And it would have been successful. But most of it was getting my landlord on side, because obviously I'm renting this place currently. So a lot of the back and forth was trying to get my landlord on side, and obviously like figuring out the logistics of that. But overall, made it work, did it. So then obviously by the time I'd got my landlord on side, I was like, right, well, I want to start the hunt, because I've been wanting a fucking dog for ages. So I want to do it now. You know, there's nothing stopping me now. Let me do it. So I bought a bunch of stuff. I started looking for a dog. I really wanted a dachshund or a dachshund. I'm not sure what people say. I know you can say it a few different ways, but I really wanted a little sausage dog for the longest time. So I was like, that's the breed that I'm going after. I found a gorgeous, guys, and I mean gorgeous. I'm going to try and not get emotional, because this has been a really tough time for me. But I found a little sausage dog, and he was perfect. I met up with the lady that was unfortunately giving him away. She'd said to me that he gets along with other dogs really well. He's already like being trained really well. Around the same time as me trying to do this, I'd already agreed to my parents that I was going to go through to their house for a week to dog sit their dog. And I'd agreed to this months ago. And then obviously as I was talking to this lady, because she'd basically got this dog from someone else, and she already had another dog, which was a Chihuahua, which was perfect because my parents' dog was a Chihuahua. And she'd said to me at length that he gets along with other dogs, and especially her dog, the Chihuahua, very, very well. The reason why I'm mentioning that is because that's going to become important later down the line. So I was like, well, that's also a plus. Like, if he's going to get along with the Chihuahua breed, then that's great. Because I will say this as well. My parents' Chihuahua is very relaxed in comparison to a lot of them. I know they can be kind of crazy. They can be kind of, I don't want to say vicious, but they can yap a lot. You know, like they can be a bit mangy, like kind of a mangy dog. Diego, so docile, gets along well with every other dog. Like, he's a great Chihuahua out of the breed, you know? So ultimately I was like, that sounds great. met the dog. He loved me. Like we had like a walk around town and stuff, and like she had him in a little carry bag, and he was just like snuggled into me in this carry bag the whole way. So overall, got along with him really, really well. Overall, I was like, okay, Slay, let's do it. Initially, because this was maybe a week and a half before, or no, it was like 2 weeks before I had to go to my parents. So I was like, is there any possibility that I can wait until I've been to my parents to then pick him up? Because obviously, like, I didn't want to bring him to my home, have him for like a week, and then have to take him somewhere else to my parents, right? So I asked this, and the lady was obviously like, I'd rather that not happen, because she doesn't want him to get too used to her environment, because she'd not had him for that long. I think maybe she'd had him for like 2 weeks. So I was like, okay, fair enough. And I didn't want to miss out on the opportunity. So I was like, you know what? Okay, it's fine. I'll make do. So I got him, yeah, probably like a week and a half before going to my parents, which in hindsight was a bad move. Everything was great. It was a major adjustment for me, because obviously he was a really young puppy. Obviously, he had to get used to me. I'd bought him a bunch of stuff. She brought his crate with him, so I was obviously doing crate training and all that kind of thing. Obviously, gradually, like I wasn't leaving him barely at all, because I was extremely guilty anytime I did. Essentially, I was doing all the training as obviously the internet recommends and stuff. Like, I was doing everything by the book. I'd done so much research. I was fully prepared. Overall, this was a very bad time for me to do it. Long story short. Obviously, it's a major adjustment personally for me in general, having something that now relies on me, which I thought I'd handle very well, which turned out didn't. And it made me feel extremely guilty to ever leave him, because it sounds ridiculous because I didn't have him for that long in the grand scheme of things, but I just found it very difficult to leave him. Obviously, when I was in the process of getting him, everyone was like, just know, like, it's going to be a big commitment. So I was fully prepared for it to be a big commitment. But what I've been saying to people when I've like talked about this issue is that I think have like people telling you and like you expecting it to be a big issue and like a big change is one thing. But I think ultimately it being that and experiencing it is vastly different. And I feel like as much as you can prepare yourself, like I prepared myself a fuck ton. Like in the little time that I had decked out this flat for it to be like the perfect environment for him. And yet, even though I'd done all that preparation, like it was still extremely daunting. And at the same time, which is something I couldn't have foreseen, basically my mental state declined extremely, because a few weeks back, you guys might remember me talking about how I think I'd had like an allergic reaction to something or whatever, and I wasn't sure what it was. So I was kind of going through it with my skin again, which is nothing new for me. I go through skin issues fucking constantly. But yeah, turns out one of the days, obviously after getting the dog, I was obviously already kind of overwhelmed, feeling guilty, crying, you know, but at the same time, obviously loving him and like he was progressing super well and all this kind of thing. One day, basically my friend was like, are you sure it's not like side effects of coming off of your steroid cream? And I was like, what? Now you guys might be thinking like, surely you'd know that there was going to be side effects. Well, funnily enough, when I got on the steroid creams and also when I got off the steroid creams, my doctor just neglected to tell me any information of things that might be a side effect or things I can experience or to gradually come off of the steroid cream or whatever. Any sort of prevention measures that I should be taking, never told me a thing. I had no fucking idea that obviously I knew being on a steroid cream for a long period of time was bad, but I only realized that maybe a month or 2 months before finally getting a different medication. Okay, didn't tell me that initially, which is fucked. And then on top of that, I've heard now as well that like doctors don't tell people about the risk of what it can do to your skin and how it can thin your skin and basically fuck you over for a very, very long time, like an extended period of time. So basically, this day, my friend obviously said this to me, and I was like, what? And I was like, no, I've got no idea. We hung up the call. I Googled, in hindsight, probably not the best thing, but Googled kind of what I could be experiencing, and lo and behold, that's exactly what it was. Um, major side effects of coming off my steroid cream. And like I had broken out in this like huge red rash all over my chest, all up my neck. Obviously anywhere I had hair, so like my beard, my eyebrows, my hair was covered. Um, and yeah, like my skin was just really, really irritated and not doing well. So that day, I kind of had a huge spiral, to be completely transparent. My mental state just kind of like went in the bin. That then obviously like together with the responsibility of handling a new puppy, and not being able to go and do things for myself anymore, because I don't think I necessarily realized how much going to the gym really affects my mental state. Because initially when I got the dog, I was like, I'm going to have 2 weeks off, 2 weeks doing nothing. Okay, I'm just going to look after this dog. I'm going to get him used to my environment, which, guys, I want to mention this. He was not a bad dog. Like, and I think this is the thing that pains me the most, and the thing that makes me very emotional, is because he was adjusting extremely well. But it kind of got to a point where I just felt like a failure, because my main issue is I don't want to take on an animal if I'm not going to be able to be there 100% present and give them the best life possible. I just think that's like the worst thing someone can do. So obviously when all this was going on, and this was then kind of like my mental state moving forward, I was so stressed and I guess depressed, which obviously was, I was just a huge goddamn fucking mess, if I'm completely honest. Like trying to keep any sort of career afloat, and like trying to get any sort of work done whatsoever, because I also didn't realize that me stopping work for an extended period of time would affect me so negatively. And then the worry of like this dog not being able to be left alone, I was like, wait, so this is going to be like this for like 6 months, and I've got no one here to look after him or take him while I get a bit of filming done, whatever. Like, it's me on my own and trying to handle this whilst also struggling with myself a lot, was just really bad. And then the last thing that I kind of like discovered, which was not I wouldn't say the straw that broke the camel's back, but something else that on top of everything else was stressing me out, was I came across a Reddit whilst I think I was Googling something to do with like dogs' nails and like the process of like having them cut or going to get them cut or whatever and whatever. I was just Googling things to do with the dog as I was doing a bunch. And I came across a Reddit thread, which is fucking ironic, and I don't know how it happened, but it was a Reddit thread created by the woman that I got this dog from. And it was basically a Reddit post of her complaining a lot about this dog and how he does not get along with her dog. The other dog hates him. All these things. Basically saying the opposite to a bunch of the things that she told me. Like, just like completely undermining everything. Right? So I'd obviously taken on this dog thinking like, oh, it'd be good for him to gel well with Diego and I wouldn't have to worry so much about that when going to my mum's house to dog sit, because he's been used to a Chihuahua, he's been used to a different dog for like 2 weeks, so it won't be something crazily new. So then obviously hearing her on this Reddit thread say that, oh, that's actually completely incorrect, and he actually does not get along well with other dogs, made me spiral even more. All this to say, generally, I got extremely stressed. It was not the right time for me to do it. And I didn't want to hold on to the dog for like several more weeks and then him get used to me and me love him even more. Because like I said, it sounds fucking ridiculous because I only had him for a short period of time. But I really loved that dog. Like I really loved that dog. And in terms of the loneliness and stuff, he was just what I needed. But yeah, basically I had to get rid of him. We found him a really lovely home with a couple in Liverpool. that they have kids, they have a huge garden. Overall, basically, like, he's gonna have an amazing life, and that's what I wanted for him. Like, I wasn't bothered about getting any of my money back. I just didn't I didn't give a fuck about any of that. For me, it was just like, I want to do what's best for this dog, and I don't know if I see my mental state improving, and then I don't know if I'll be able to be present for the dog as much as I really want to be if I continue on this path. Because at the same time, I was like, well, I've got all these skin issues. How am I going to get this under control if I can't go to a doctor's or like whatever? Like, if I had friends in the area or I had family in the area that could have come over and like kind of helped me co-parent, I think the situation would have been vastly different. But yeah, overall, I feel like a failure, still do. This is why I've kind of been putting off talking about it, because I don't want to disappoint anybody, because I already feel shit enough as it is. So, yeah. And I know a lot of people might be watching this thinking like, why are we even talking about this? This is not a big deal. For me, it really was, because I don't take getting a dog lightly. Like, it was a huge step for me to take on something like that, and I was super excited, but it came at such a bad time and with things that I just could not have foreseen, that it wasn't right for me, and it wasn't right for the dog. Like, he deserved so much better. So I made sure he got better. And yeah, now he's called Cooper, and I get videos every once in a while, and he's doing amazing. So it's a happy story for him. And I will say, it was difficult giving him up, because like I said, I did really love the dog. Now looking back, it was definitely the right choice, because I think there's underlying issues both mentally and physically with me, I guess, that I need to confront. I don't know. There's something going amiss that I don't think getting a dog would have solved. I think it would have been one of those things that kind of is like a plaster over an open wound, or whatever the fucking saying is, you know? Like, I don't know if that would have necessarily been beneficial as much as I thought it was. I don't know. I don't really know the point of this. I just wanted to speak to you guys about it, because a bunch of people have been asking me about it over on the Discord, and I don't want to not talk about it, because this is what this podcast is here for. I speak about my feelings, and I speak about things that I'm going through. And overall, it was just a very, very, very rough time for me, like probably the lowest I've ever been. And yeah, it's very much affecting me still, which I didn't expect, but it is one of those things. Like, I literally, like, I called my mum, and I was just like, Mum, I feel like a huge fucking failure. And I was like reading up on it and seeing if this is like a normal feeling to kind of like, I don't know, have like mourn a loss of yourself before the pet, which apparently is completely normal. But then on top of that, just like having all these other issues just going on was just like, it was just terrible, terrible timing. And I won't lie, this has not put me off getting a dog, but I think I now know that I need to be in a completely different scenario when I next get a dog. Like, I want to have a partner. I want to have a house. I want to have a completely different setup when I have a dog next. And I'm glad I tried it. And yeah. Go easy on me, please, in the comments, because I don't know if I can handle being told how pathetic I am. I don't think I can handle that. So, yeah, this is quite a touchy subject for me. Like, usually I'm fine, but I think, I don't know, this was just the first time that I've really felt like a failure when I've really tried to do something that was like a big step. I don't know. I'm chatting a bunch of shit, and I don't think this is going to be a very long episode by any means, but I think I need to leave this here, because there's other deep things that I need to talk about that are not dog related, but I don't know if I can talk about them now without getting emotional. So I think I'm going to leave this episode here. But I guess tune in soon for more deep shit, because this is probably the first of two. But yeah, there you go. That's what happened to my dog. Is at a better home with a lovely family, and I'm less depressed now. I'm less depressed. I'm doing better. Yeah, so all that to say, this is why I said at the beginning, although we'll touch on deep shit, ultimately I'm on the up, and we're a few weeks out now. Like, I think it's been like 3 weeks since So, yeah, I don't know how this episode is going to be received, to be honest, and I am scared to post it, but yeah. I'll see you next week with another episode. Thanks for listening if you made it to this point. Love yous. Bye.